film which you are about to see is the account of the horrific disappearance of 5 men at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. For many people in the world, the legend of the Titanic sinking in the year 1912 conjures up the imagination like no other. From the larger-than-history iceberg crash and sinking, to the fact that it sits an incredible 12,500 feet below the ocean's surface. Many people risk their lives every single year just to catch a small glimpse of this sunken legend. Well, Stockton Rush, Hamish Harding, Paul-Henri Nargeolet, along with father and son duo Shahzada Dawood and Suleman Dawood were such men. Stockton Rush, the 61-year-old founder and CEO of OceanGate Expeditions and the pilot of the Titan submersible, was an engineer with some experience in aerospace. He earned his bachelor's degree in aerospace engineering from Princeton University in 1984 and an MBA from Berkeley Haas School of Business in 1989. At 19 years old, Stockton even became the youngest person to become a jet transport rated pilot when he earned his DC-8 type captain's rating at the United Airlines Jet Training Institute, according to Stockton himself. It wouldn't be until 2009 that he had the idea to create OceanGate, and wouldn't be for another 12 years that they could actually begin offering Titanic expeditions to civilians seeking a glimpse of the sunken behemoth. Hamish Harding, the 58-year-old British businessman, was the chairman of a company known as Action Aviation, which sells aircrafts to Fortune 100 companies, international corporations, head of states, and people in the entertainment and sports industries, according to the website. Aside from his business, Hamish was also known for his exploits as an adventurer, who held several records with the Guinness Book of World Records, like the fastest circumnavigation of Earth via both geographic poles by plane, which he and a team managed to accomplish in 2019 in a little under 46 hours. Hamish was also one of 6 people on Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin mission in 2022 that flew to the edge of space, and was also a part of a trip that explored the Mariana Trench at more than 35,876 feet below the sea level. And in 2016 even accompanied Buzz Aldrin to the South Pole, an amazing accomplishment that Buzz himself completed at the age of 86. The third occupant was 77-year-old Titanic expert Paul-Henri Nargeolet, a man known as the Titanic expert with more than 37 expeditions under his own belt throughout his lifetime. He was also the director of underwater research for RMS Titanic, an American company that owns the salvage rights to the wreck, and worked there for almost 30 years himself, and even served in the French Navy as an officer who specialized in mine clearing, diving, and deep water intervention from 1964 to 1986. The last 2 passengers on this voyage were the father-son duo 48-year-old Shahzada Dawood and 19-year-old Suleman Dawood. Shahzada was the vice chairman of Dawood Hercules, an investment and holding company based in Pakistan. He also held a master's degree in global textiles marketing and was heir to one of Pakistan's biggest fortunes. His son Suleman, on the other hand, was a science fiction fan and also enjoyed solving Rubik's Cubes and playing volleyball with his friends. All 4 men were extremely excited about their trip to the Titanic and were ready to pay Stockton Rush and OceanGate a combined $1,250,000 to see the famed wreck. But not just for tourism, but also to conduct their own research of the site. The vehicle that they would choose for this perilous and dangerous trip was a 22-foot-long Titan submersible, a tiny submarine built for 5 people, a captain and 4 crew members, with a built-in life support that could keep 5 men alive for about 96 hours. And in all reality, a true death trap for anyone crazy enough to ride in it at those depths. The vessel held 0 seaworthy certifications from any authorities due to it doing most of its operations in international waters. Any passenger of the Titan must also sign a waiver before entering that states that the passenger is stepping into an experimental vessel with no certifications and is at risk for physical harm, emotional distress, and even death, with the word death appearing at least 3 times in the first page alone. The vessel was able to make 2 expeditions to the Titanic already, with the first being in 2021 and the second in 2022. The small structure with just enough room for 5 personnel, 1 small toilet, and 2 small circular windows made it horribly unsuitable for prolonged deep underwater stays, with the average experience on the submersible consisting of a 2-hour-long descent into the abyss with just a sandwich to eat, followed by an only 20-minute view of the famed ship itself. The sub also had to rely on a text messaging system with its mothership, the Polar Prince, for its GPS needs, as it had none itself. The most controversial thing, though, was that the entire vessel was to be controlled by a cheap generic PlayStation Bluetooth controller, something that many people in the past have had their concerns on. Many even went as far as to try to advocate for a classification agency to come and inspect the company for certifications, which ultimately was ignored by OceanGate management, as OceanGate cited that reliance on acoustic tests were better suited to detect safety issues, and later fired the alleged whistleblower, citing that they were in breach of their contract. On Sunday, June 18, 2023, the fateful day had finally come and all 5 men were beyond excited. Hamish Harding even posted on his Facebook page a few hours before the voyage, stating that, "I am proud to finally announce that I had joined the OceanGate expedition for their RMS Titanic mission as a mission specialist on the sub going down to the Titanic. Due to the worst winter in Newfoundland in over 40 years, this mission is likely to be the first and only manned mission into the Titanic in 2023. A weather window has just opened up and we are going to attempt to dive tomorrow. We started steaming from St. John's, Newfoundland, Canada yesterday and are planning to start dive operations around 4 a.m. tomorrow morning. Until then, we have a lot of preparations and briefings to do." The team on the sub has a couple of legendary explorers, some of which have done over 30 dives to the RMS Titanic since the 1980s, including Paul-Henri Nargeolet. More expedition updates to follow if the weather holds. Though just as he feared, the voyage had to be delayed by 4 hours, and instead of shipping off at 4 a.m., they had to wait for 8 a.m. to start their descent. Then, as they were in their dive at a depth of about 4,000 meters at 9:45 a.m., an hour and 45 minutes into their trip, the submersible would inevitably lose communication with the mothership. Then, according to the Coast Guard, the sub was scheduled to surface no later than 3 p.m. Though as this never happened, at about 5:40 p.m., the Coast Guards would finally receive a report of a trailing 21-foot submarine from the Canadian research vessel, the Polar Prince, with 5 people on board on their way to the Titanic. And by this time, the 5 men must have been horrified of their situation, knowing that no one could really save them in a reasonable time frame. And with all the metal around the sub most likely being compressed by the immense water pressure, the men must have felt like being in a real-life nightmare, knowing that their vessel could implode at any moment, with only fractions of a second to react. The next day, on Monday, June 19th, both American and Canadian ships and aircrafts would comb the surrounding area for any signs of the sub, with some of the ships able to deploy sonar measuring up to an incredible 3,962 meters. Though according to Rear Admiral John Mauger of the United States Coast Guard, it was a remote area and a challenge to conduct a search operation, so this is an incredibly complex site. There you have to remember that it's the wreck site of the Titanic, so there was a lot of metal and different objects that are in the water around the site. That's why it's so important that we've engaged experts from the Navy that understand the science behind noise that can classify or give us better information about what the source of the noise may be. In the meantime, it's something. It's a target, it's a focus for us to look. The next day, on Tuesday, June 20th at around 10 a.m., France would announce that it would assist in the search by deploying their ship Adeland, which itself was equipped with a deep-sea submersible. The ship was scheduled to arrive late Wednesday, though by this time, if the men were still alive, the 96 hours of air would have been drained down to about 48 hours. Still enough time for a rescue, but definitely pushing the limits. Later that same day, sounds were being detected throughout the site by Canadian Lockheed PB Orion aircraft. They observed periodic popping sounds every 30 minutes. Then the next day, on Wednesday, June 21st, a joint command team was established between the United States Coast Guard, United States Navy, Canadian Coast Guard, and OceanGate at around 2 a.m. The U.S. Coast Guard then confirmed that the Canadian aircrafts had detected underwater sounds coming from the site, and that remote-operated submarines were already on their way to the area of the sounds in question to find any clues to what might have happened. Later, United States Coast Guard Captain Jamie Frederick would come out to say, "We need to have hope, but I can't tell you what the noises are. What I can tell you is we're searching where the noises are, and that's all we can do at this point." A little later, around 4:09 a.m., Explorers Club President Richard Garrett wrote a message on Twitter about the investigation, stating that, "We are so grateful for the U.S. Coast Guard and other international teams and commercial operators doing everything they can to help find the Titanic submersible." Later that day, around 1 p.m., more sounds would be heard coming from the deep, but coming from such a vast possible field, they couldn't pinpoint exactly where the noises were coming from, so they expanded the search field to twice the original size. Then a little later, more vessels would join the search, including another research ship equipped with another deep-sea submersible that could help expand the search area. Captain Jamie Frederick would then go on to say, "Aerial searches and using remotely operated vehicles have yielded a negative result. This is a search and rescue mission 100%. We are smack dab in the middle of a search and rescue, and we'll continue to put every available asset that we have in an effort to find the Titan and crew members. The oxygen, that's just one piece of the data, but that's not the only thing that's important. Sometimes you're in a position where you have to make a tough decision. We're not there yet. If we continue to search, potentially we could be at that point. That's a discussion that we will have with the families long before I'm going to discuss that in public." And Captain Frederick left it at that. On Thursday, June 22nd, around 8 a.m., 2 remotely operated vehicles were deployed as a part of the search operation. Many experts weren't sure whether the sub was in the middle of the ocean or sitting on the ocean floor, and feared that this search could take weeks, if not more, to actually locate the small vessel. Then a few hours later, around 11 a.m., a Canadian naval ship arrived at the site with a medical team on board that specialized in diving medicine. Then about 48 minutes later, the U.S. Coast Guard reported the discovery of a debris field in the search area by a remotely operated submarine near the wreckage of the Titanic itself. And about 5 hours later, around 4 p.m., the U.S. Coast Guard declared that the 5 crew members were most likely deceased and most likely died from a catastrophic implosion. A few hours later, Rear Admiral John Mauger would come out to say that a remote-control submarine had detected the Titan's tail cone and that the debris field containing 5 large parts of the ship was observed by a remote-controlled vehicle searching the sea floor near the Titanic's wreck found about 400 miles from the coast of Newfoundland, Canada. He then came back out to say the debris is consistent with a catastrophic implosion of the pressure chamber. Upon this determination, we immediately notified the families on behalf of the United States Coast Guard and the entire Unified Command. I offer my deepest condolences to the families. I can only imagine what this has been like for them, and I hope that this discovery provides some solace during this difficult time." The OceanGate team also put out a statement saying that we at the OceanGate Foundation are devastated by the tragic news about our friends and colleagues. We are keeping them and their loved ones in our thoughts and in our hearts. We wish to acknowledge all the efforts of the individuals and organizations involved in the valiant search for the Titan and its crew, and appreciate the expressions of sympathy from people all around the world for this terrible loss. The almost 7 atmospheres of water pressure at extreme depths caused the collapse of the Titan's hull, resulting in a superheated bubble filling the area for a fraction of a second before the implosion, causing everyone inside to turn into a thick gel or paste before the rest of the hull was instantly destroyed. And many researchers warned that the implosion was the worst possible outcome given the extreme conditions that the Titan had faced. Following this, the Transportation Safety Board of Canada, TSB, launched an investigation into the loss of the Titan. A team from the board traveled to Newfoundland to gather more information as a flag state of the support ship involved. They will now lead a security investigation to determine the circumstances surrounding the implosion. And in addition to the TSB, several other international agencies worked on the case, including the United States Coast Guard, the United States National Transportation Safety Board, the French Maritime Casualties Investigation Board, and the UK's Maritime Accident Investigation Branch. Later, on June 25th, the Coast Guard held a Marine Board of Investigation to examine the loss of the Titan, the highest order of investigation that the Coast Guard could offer. All of their efforts were then focused on the contributing factors of the implosion, something that might not be finished until every single piece of debris is found, something that realistically will take years to complete. Many court records also showed that OceanGate has had several mechanical issues with their submarines, along with a bad reputation of going out in bad weather in the recent years before the incident, with many trips having to be canceled or postponed and many rich travelers suing the company to get their $250,000 deposit back, as many claimed that the trips were not as advertised. Many said that the company had painted an overly optimistic picture of the possibility of reaching the wreck of the Titanic, but was overwhelmingly disappointed or outright had the trip canceled altogether. In 2021, the London-based company Henry Cookson & Ventures accused OceanGate of not having a seaworthy ship when they entered into an agreement in 2016 to have 9 of their passengers transported to the Titanic wreck in 2018. Henry Cookson wanted to recover $850,000 that was paid to OceanGate, And unfortunately, OceanGate never responded to the allegations and were never reached for any comment, but would later state on their own website that delays due to weather and lightning had hindered the company from completing a series of test dives. Henry Cookson would then later state that the claim of lightning strikes has not been verified, and the true reason may be because the submersible vessel was unable to be certified at the time for safe operations. And unfortunately for OceanGate, the issues didn't end there. In 2022, OceanGate attempted to take news correspondent Dave Polk for a quick dive in one of their submersibles when unexpectedly, the trip had to be cut short due to equipment failure after only descending a short 37 feet. They would try for a second time, but the vessel would go on to lose contact with the mothership and fail to relocate the wreck of the ship, resulting in them being lost at sea for 2.5 hours before being found again. Then closer to the current disaster, a Florida couple in 2023 claimed in a lawsuit that OceanGate refused to refund all their money as their trip was postponed several times back in 2018. As Stockton Rush himself, the CEO, would come out to say that some expeditions were delayed because OceanGate was forced to rebuild the hull of the Titan due to fatigue that prevented the vessel from diving deep enough to reach the Titanic. In January of 2018, the technical team was about to hand over the Titan to the new crew set to be responsible for the safety of future passengers. With their Titan mission, they pointed out potential dangers and urged the company to invest in a certification process. David Lockridge, the director of maritime operations at OceanGate, would then go on to write a report highlighting the need for more extensive testing of the ship and warning to the potential dangers to the Titan passengers, as the submarine reached extreme depths a few weeks before the ill-fated implosion that happened in June. And even more insane, Jay Bloom and his son, Sean Bloom, decided weeks in advance of the implosion to give their seats up. When the Titan, as they both expressed concerns over the submarine's safety and its ability to dive deep enough into the ocean, eventually both spots would be sold to the Dawood family. Apparently, Jay and Sean Bloom were both shown a video that had OceanGate CEO Stockton Rush walk through the Titan and explain all the features with them. Sean Bloom explained to a news channel, "I saw a lot of red flags." Sean voiced his concerns to his father, Jay Bloom, letting him know that he believed the ship would not be capable of even reaching the depths needed to even reach the Titanic itself. He has a different risk appetite than I do. Then both Jay and Sean stated that Stockton waved away their questions of concern on the safety of the sub and voyage overall, stating that he had so much passion for the project that he was blinded by it. He didn't look at the things that I saw and that others saw that were problematic because it didn't fit his narrative. Then after seeing the news and feeling like a guardian angel was watching over both of them, Jay and Sean declared that they would never plan to try such a thing again. All I could see when I saw that father and son was myself and my son. That could have been us. About 3 days later, on June 28th, the debris from the missing Titan was brought ashore to Newfoundland. The debris was found on the ocean floor not too far from the Titanic itself. They were then salvaged at the port of St. John. They also began exhuming presumed human remains found in the shattered hull of the sub, where medical professionals would conduct more clear analysis on the remains. Though due to the severe state of the bodies, it will most likely only be failings and metal joint replacements that they find. Most of the information in this case has already surfaced, but there is sure to be more information in the weeks to months to even years that follow. With that being said though, may this story be a warning to you not to take safety lightly, and may all 5 men rest in peace. And once again, thank you for joining me. Remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons and turn on the notification bell for more content in the future. Goodbye for now.